Hello again. Welcome to AI Decoded. $2.5 trillion. That is what the world will spend on artificial intelligence this year. That's up nearly 50% on last year. But what is the return for that investment? Every boardroom has been told the same story. This will transform productivity, cut costs, change the way that we all work. A year ago, the research suggested that wasn't happening. Barely any of it was showing up on the balance sheet. So where are we now? Well, the most recent studies show there have been improvements in some areas. Give the AI a clearly defined task, write code, answer customer queries, the systems are measurably faster. But most businesses are a chain. And all too often, speeding up one link just piles up the work at the next. So how do we solve that? With us this week, Peter Grant, CEO of GoWeaver.ai, and James Kuht, who is the founder of Pair. Both spend their working lives inside companies trying to close this gap, so hopefully they'll be able to answer the question. And with us this week, our co-host and author of Technology is Not Neutral, Dr. Stephanie Hare, is here too. Welcome to you all. Peter, let me start with you. Going back to the MIT study a year ago, 95% of these projects were delivering nothing measurable. Is that changing?
I think it is slowly starting to change, but I do think that's a canary in the coal mine. I think that report has come under some criticism, Christian, because it was a very small sample. It was taking of 153 companies coming back from them. But a more recent report by PwC that was released at Davos this year, the World Economic Forum, was across 4,500 CEOs in 95 countries. But that found that 56% of them are yet to see a return on investment from the investments they've made in generative AI, and only 1 in 8 can actually claim a cost saving or revenue generation. I think the short answer is 1 is trust, 2 is complexity, and 3 is speed. Enterprises are very different to how consumers buy generative AI.
So is it failing because companies are buying technologies faster than they know how to use them? Or do they know exactly what they want and can't make it work?
I think it's probably the latter, but go back to trust. So these closed models, they want data. They're like a plant. And imagine the plant's the algorithm and water is what feeds the plant. And the issue is that they need this data, they need this information, but enterprises, their IP is basically locked inside their 4 walls, and they need to protect that to make sure those organizations don't have that information. So they're very cautious about how they implement generative AI, but also trust comes down to the answers that you're getting from the agents as well. So as we know, these systems hallucinate. In the consumer space, that's fine. But if you're a bank, if you're lending money, if you're in pharmaceuticals and you're doing research and everything else, you have to be correct in what you're doing. So that's why organizations are cautious. That's why it's taking a bit more time as well. But I think there's a misset expectation. If you think Google took 5 years to get to 100 million users, ChatGPT took 60 days. That's 30 times faster than anything we've ever seen before. So I think organizations are struggling with that to really digest it and make it meaningful in their companies.
Yes, shareholders are an impatient mob. James, I know you're going to tell me that technology is not the hard part. We're already at PhD level systems. It's about adoption.
Yeah, I mean, we've never had a challenge like this before, and suddenly we've got PhD level intelligence in almost every subject that occasionally lies on tap. And it's very difficult for your average employee in an organization to use those tools to their full potential. And right now, almost everyone has access. They've all got Copilot, or they've got ChatGPT, or they're using Claude. Maybe their boss doesn't know, but very few of them are adopting it meaningfully and actually using these tools to their capability. And that's what we call the adoption gap, right? And actually, it's big and growing bigger as the frontier of models progresses.
What do you think is the problem, Stephanie? Do you think it's a technology problem or a human behavior problem?
So first of all, it's not enough to just give people a tool and say, work it out. Most people are not receiving the kind of training that you would need to make the most of these tools. And that's quite scary if you think about it, given that it is everywhere. It's in hospitals. So you've got doctors who are maybe chatting with you and using ChatGPT along with the patients to discuss symptoms, check diagnoses, and check treatments. Not going through the ethics of that, the governance of that. Is it safe to upload your medical results and tests into these models or not? They hallucinate, so they just get things wrong. They also just lie They just make things up and have to be challenged. It all depends on how you prompt. There's an art of prompting. People don't do training because training's a cost. So that's one reason I think we're not seeing the value yet. But second is I think we see value in things like software development or customer service, but we're not seeing it necessarily throughout the entire organization because you might speed up productivity in one part of your business, but that doesn't mean that
Can
you
you give me
speed
an
it up in the
example of
other.
that? Where would you see it within that chain that I described? Where
Yeah,
would you see a speeding up of the business processes, and where would you see
sure.
the bottleneck?
So let's look at the business of healthcare. So you go into a hospital, everybody can understand radiology, right? So the people are looking at your scans. That's your x-rays, your MRIs, CAT scans. Just because you are able to use AI to process scans and read them faster to look for a bone break or a tumor doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to cut patient waiting lists
Mm.
or get faster treatment for people because the scan is just one of many, many tasks, all of which have to be signed off. Healthcare is highly regulated by doctors the whole way through. Well, those doctors aren't getting more time just because the scans are being read faster.
Right.
So those red scans pile up, but everybody still has to then put them through the same old processes. I think we'll have to rethink a lot of workflows from the ground up because of AI.
Is time on the side of some of these companies, Peter? Because $2.5 trillion in total spend this year is an awful lot of money. What I'm not sure about is what this looks like on the balance sheet, and how do you measure it for shareholders?
Yeah, we like to call it an ROI, but return on intelligence rather than return on investment. And that's really for every dollar or pound that you spend, what measurable business value are you actually getting back? So we've created a framework basically for enterprises to be able to measure this. So the money they're spending, how do you measure it? Four vectors, basically, are you starting, are you experimenting today, all the way through to are you the agentic enterprise where humans and agents are basically working together? What's your strategy? Who owns that strategy? What's the budget you're doing to fund it? And are you actually doing a proper ROI analysis before you fund any of those particular workflows that Stephanie was talking about? What is your data? What's the state of it? How do you get access to the data? Can you get to the system of record for the ROI? So your CRM, your customer relationship management systems, your ERP systems. What's the technology you're using? So have you just let everybody use it like James was talking about, Copilot, Perplexity, OpenAI, whatever? Or is it structured your approach by team or by organization, the governance that you have? And governance is super important as well, especially when you talk about ZDR, which is zero data retention, to make sure it's not being leaked outside. We have control over that. Some people have been doing some famous cases about that. And then workforce literacy, as Stephanie was quite rightly saying, have you trained and have you enabled people? You wouldn't start at a bank and say, okay, go and do the lending straight away. You train people, you enable them, you certify them, you make sure they're an ambassador for your brand before they talk to customers. You need to do exactly the same with AI as well. And then the final, probably the most important thing is what's in pilot and what's actually in production and what is that ratio? And we're seeing at the moment about 30% in our index from those people that are actually, say, got 10 pilots running, only 30 are actually running production in your workflows.
Right. Well, when it comes to pilots, I mean, obviously that is quantifiable. You can see that on a balance sheet, but there are some processes and some things you might do using AI which are not as quantifiable, James.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this just before. One of the things that AI has been most valuable for me in the recent past was helping us think through and then execute on our US expansion as a business. It's quite a complex thing to do. I'd never done it before. I spoke to 5 different people about it. They gave 5 different opinions. Probably some of them would be classed as a hallucination if an AI gave it. But AI was really helpful in market mapping, working out our messaging over there, working out what we had to do on the payroll side and share side. And it's very difficult to isolate the sort of one bit of ROI AI gave us there. But it's unarguable for me and for, my leadership team that there's been an unbelievable enabler to helping us get started over in the US. So that was one where I thought it doesn't neatly fit, a project. There's not just one part it's helped with. It's helped with the ideation part. It's helped with planning and operations. It's helped with actually going off and, helping us make some of the first sales over there. And I don't know whether it fits neatly into a project box, but good God, it's been valuable.
Okay, well, maybe then the problem isn't technology at all. Maybe it's this assumption that you can buy a tool and immediately expect people to change how they work. So let's talk about the workforce, because this is where you come in, James. Are businesses spending more on software than they are on training the people who use it? And what does that training need to look like?
Undoubtedly. I mean, there's lots of stats on this. The latest I've heard is that 3 times as many people in British businesses have access to an AI tool versus those who have access to AI training. So most people are getting access to AI with no training. So that's undoubtable. And the thing that people are often missing with the training that they do deliver when they deliver it is it focuses very much on how do you use the tool. Well, you write in the box and you click enter, or maybe you speak to it. It's pretty easy to actually use it. The thing which is difficult and is at the crux of successful training on using these tools is helping people cross this imagination gap between I know how to write in the box and I know how to use this tool to reinvent how I actually work and use my time to deliver value, not just, do things faster and push a bottleneck onto someone else. And I think bridging this imagination gap between I know how to use a tool and I know how to actually use it to reimagine my role and do more valuable things is the thing that people really need to get across to deliver value from training.
So where does that stem from, do you think, Peter? Is it top down? The senior executives need to encourage AI adoption within the workforce, or does it, as I suggested, grow organically?
Interesting question. If you think about, I've gone through many different technology revolutions, should we say? I'm 30 years in the industry. And because I mentioned speed earlier, the speed that this has come is unprecedented. What most companies have been, they've been lazy with regards to change management. So people process technology and they've just given people the keys to the car without teaching them to drive. What I find the most successful ones are where the CEO, where she leads the initiative and she leads by example with her own agents and she shows how she's using them with her executive team. And that permutates down to get people really encouraged to say, well, if she's doing it, I need to do it as well. So
because what? That creates a more permissive environment within the company.
Yeah, exactly. And culturally, it says this is a good thing to do. This is the organization that we're going to be. This is part of our strategy, our vision, and everything else. We do believe this technology can help us. It's not a technology issue. It's more the enablement side and the art of the possible that's role specific, how I can do this in my job. So we have a customer called Mindcast, 2,500 people. The CEO led that. We went in and trained them with James's business, and it permutated down. And the evidence that we see it's working, Christian, is basically in queries, how they're querying the agents, how they're using them day in, day out, whether it be in sales, in marketing, in writing code, or in procurement for assessing companies, or many different use cases, but their usage has been off the charts.
I can understand the permissive environment within a company allows people to take hold of the AI and run with it. Is there any resistance? Because let's face it, out there is a lot of animosity towards AI and the replacement of jobs. Do we take it for granted that people want to use it?
I think people are using it more and more in their personal lives, and that's often sort of the gateway into this, right? I used it to plan my holiday or to find a deal, and that kind of helps you build a bit of muscle memory for in your work. I think secondly, it helps when, leaders model the behaviors they want to see, as Peter's just said. When a leader shows this is normal, this is okay, I use this, it's not dangerous if used in the right way within our guardrails, and actually we're going to celebrate good use of this if it leads to value. And I think thirdly, what happens, what we generally see is as you start to build some momentum and more people around you start to build agents. And Barry from procurement, did you hear? He's built an agent. I thought Barry was about to take VR. The social sort of.
Well, can you give
pressure
me some
grows.
examples of that? Some fun examples of companies you've been into where you've seen that happen?
Yeah, I'll link it to Peter's point actually around execs really grasping the tools. So there's a CEO of a manufacturing company in Coventry. He's called Graham. He's fab. I didn't ask him about the shout out, so I hope you don't mind. but anyway, he's absolutely massively into AI, and he's using Lovable to build prototypes of how he'd like to see the future of consultancy delivered from his business. And he's also using Claude and experimenting with that. And I think through showing his team where he sees a vision of the future in a way which is tangible and shows a bit of what's possible in the future, but does it safely with synthetic data and prototypes initially, I think is pretty exciting. And I think it's
How old's Graham?
Oh, I wouldn't want to guess now. Don't put me on the spot.
40s, 50s?
Oh, I'd say late 40s.
You see, we sort of, the reason I ask is because there's a whole new policy that the government is setting out today that in England that they want to educate children at the age of 14 on AI that is being used by local companies. I wonder if you think, Stephanie, that is the way we should be going. So we introduce children to it at a very early age.
So My view is I would really like to see us get kids reading books the way they need to be before we start having them mess around with AI. I think there's a time and place for AI in education, but I'm really worried actually that we're raising a generation of children who don't have the critical thinking skills that come from the old skill set, the traditional skill set of basic literacy, numeracy, and ability to write.
Hmm.
So before we these are really powerful tools that affect the cognitive abilities of adults with PhDs who were raised in an analog era. Okay, so we put them onto children whose brains are still forming, who don't have that reading habit built in, who aren't used to writing and learning how to express ideas and thinking. They won't have what we all have,
Hmm.
which is decades of muscle memory and critical expertise to be able to look at an AI response and know it's wrong, know it's hallucinating. So I kind of feel like, can we just give the kids a break?
The people who work in this are both nodding, but I mean, you go into companies, are young employees skilled for the job?
Um, whilst I agree with Stephanie on you cannot shortcut expertise and developing critical thinking, I think that is separate from whether young people entering the workforce should be proficient at using AI. And I think that is unarguably a good thing and something which is lacking right now.
Hmm.
And I think an 18-year-old who leaves school with good critical thinking skills, who is developing expertise, but who is also AI fluent, is going to be extraordinary. And unfortunately, there's not many of them.
Well, all of that brings us to one organization that tried to test every single thing that we just discussed in a classroom in New York. Salamanca is a very small rural district in western New York on Seneca Nation territory. And they've just announced that they've bought a humanoid robot called Sally. Get it? Sally Salamanca. Silicon skin, moving facial expressions, western New York accent. So she's going to fit in really well. For $57,000, which I guess is a lot less than the salary of a single teacher. Anyway, she's been brought in to assist in coding with AI classes from September alongside an AI teaching assistant. But then the teachers got wind of it and the unions got wind of it. And on Friday, the district paused the whole thing. Now, there are supporters who say it will prepare children for the world they're going to inherit. And then there are the teachers many of the parents who say there is no substitute for real face-to-face interaction. Why do you think, Peter, that story in Salamanca makes people so angry?
I don't know. And I think it's quite sad that it does, really. I think this is a bit of fun, right? And I think to James's point, the earlier you can introduce AI to children and help and support them to get them ready for the workplace, I think it's really important. We're moving into a world where we will control agents. We will become managers of agents that understand business processes, but there's always going to be a human in the loop. But they're going to take away some of the mundane tasks. If you can teach children how to do that, but I also agree with Stephanie, they need to understand the basics of grammar, arithmetic, and everything else as well. Absolutely, 100%. But why not introduce it? I think it's a bit of fun. I think if it engages children more, it helps educate them and it makes learning fun. Then I'm very supportive.
I was thinking when I was reading this, isn't this what Priya does? She takes robots into companies, doesn't she, and into school classrooms with Century Tech, and she teaches them how to use these robots. But I mean, is it the technology these people are objecting to, Stephanie, or is it the symbolism of a robot standing where a teacher ordinarily would?
Oh my God, where to even start with this? Education polity in the United States in 30 seconds. So, first of all, we know that again, American children are doing worse on their reading comprehension, their writing abilities, and their numeracy. So, we're not doing the basic 3 R's, right? We have the data on that. It's not an AI problem. It's been going for at least the past 20 years, and it's not unique to the United States. But my point is, we have a problem, Houston.
Hmm.
Okay. Then the teachers' unions are, of course, incredibly powerful and active in the United States, as probably elsewhere. They can stop things, they can go on strike. It's a nightmare. So they probably feel quite disrespected, worried about their jobs. And then I think there's parents who are saying, can we please just teach the kids?
Hmm.
I agree that we want them to get exposed to AI as we want them exposed to everything. I'm not sure a $57,000 robot is the best return.
Okay, audience question. In fact, the prize for the best question of the week goes to Thomas, who said this: AI systems are secured against the threats we already know about. So what is to stop an advanced AI finding entirely new ways to exploit systems that no human has ever anticipated, particularly if it's pursuing its own objectives. Very timely question because, Stephanie, OpenAI admitted in the past week 2 of its models had escaped a sealed testing environment, found a 0-day, got onto the internet and hacked Hugging Face, an AI hosting platform, in order to steal the answers and cheat the system, thus pursuing its own objectives. So Thomas's question is absolutely right. What do we do about that?
I mean, there's nothing that we can do to prevent that in the sense of that is a risk. It's always been a risk. It's a risk. It will happen again. I'm amazed that we're not hearing more about it. What's interesting in the OpenAI Hugging Face case is that both companies were open and transparent.
Hmm.
What is worrying about it as well is that could have really caused serious harm. I mean, we're lucky it was Hugging Face, frankly, that was hacked. And I'm sure if that had a financial repercussion,
not a
for
power
them,
plant.
they would want, exactly, they would want, or a hospital again, where all of a sudden, you've got machines going down mid-operation.
You see, I was rushing to this question from our top conversation because we're talking about rolling out AI through the company, right? And I want to know, Peter, if you are thinking about an agentic system within your company and you're dealing with very sensitive information, this same problem applies to that, doesn't it? You might create a sandbox environment, a testing environment within the company, but if it's dealing with very sensitive information, what is to guarantee that it doesn't leak?
Well, I think I'm not an AI research scientist, Christian, so I want to caveat the answer with this. But this is basically what's called rainbow teaming, where you create one agent that's nefarious, that basically has to create all different ways of attacking a system. And then you're doing what's called open-ended learning, where you create another agent to inoculate itself against it and is constantly doing and learning from it. And that's basically what you're doing. You're using the AI to protect itself against other AI.
Right. You gave us an example of a CEO in Coventry, Graham, I think it was, who is trying things himself, inventing, forward thinking. How does a CEO sitting at the top of a company, knowing that some of his employees or her employees are trialing systems in same ways, what is to reassure them that that kind of sensitive information doesn't break out, or indeed that the agents working for her company doesn't hack into the sensitive systems of another?
Yeah, well, I think you need to have a pragmatic and thoughtful CISO, security lead or digital lead, who's thinking through these problems and keeping up to date, Christian, with what's out there, because the threat picture is evolving at an extraordinary rate when it comes to cybersecurity. And for Graham, he has people he can look to for that, right? It's his chief digital officer, Patrick, a very pragmatic guy. Will be looking into these sort of threat vectors and making sure that the way they roll out AI, has guardrails on it and the right checks and balances in place. And I think every digital leader will be thinking about that. For a small business, it's a bit harder. You may not have that expertise in-house. And we obviously have the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Centre, which puts out great guidance on this sort of things to help particularly small and medium-sized businesses. And I think you've got to keep your ear to the ground on this stuff because this is rapidly evolving.
I mean, security is the key issue here. The detail in the story about OpenAI and the hack of Hugging Face was that when it tried to throw the intruder out, its own AI defenses were slowed by the guardrails they put in place. The attacker was bound by no such rules. The two systems OpenAI had weren't bound by those rules. So, I mean, in that sense, it becomes an arms race.
Yes, and it comes to a bigger point that we've talked about a lot on this show of the US-China tech race. So the United States is looking at going, should we be regulating our models? Do we want to regulate other countries' models? Having to use a Chinese model, which Hugging Face had to do, to respond to this threat, it doesn't speak very well to the US AI industry at the moment, or our approach to regulating it or not. This feels very Wild West to me, and I don't like it because all these companies keep being told the future is agentic. You need to move into having AI agents all over your operations. Maybe you don't yet. Maybe that's going to come back and bite you.
Peter, give me the last thought on that.
It's interesting. I mean, Kimi just got released from China, which is an open model. So for everybody, that means you can take that model, you can install it yourself, you could put a firewall around it, you understand the weights, the algorithms and everything else. Where a closed model, you'll be giving your data to that model. They can take it, they can use all that information. That's what scares enterprises the most. I think what you're going to see, Christian, is a hybrid. So you're going to see large organizations will actually go back to on-prem. They will protect all their data at all costs, and they will decide where they send the query to for the agent, whether it goes outside the organization for a very basic query or internally for something to protect their own IP, which is ultimately comes back to trust.
Brilliant place to leave it. Where we started. It's all about trust, isn't it? Peter Grant, James Kuht, Dr. Stephanie Hare, really good to talk to you all. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this week's AI Decoded. Just a reminder that we are taking a break through August, but the program will be back at the beginning of September. In the meantime, if you have any thoughts or questions or feedback for everything we've discussed, do email us aidecoded@bbc.co.uk, and we've put on the screen for you the QR code. So if you want to look back at the previous episodes of AI Decoded, it's all there on the YouTube playlist, and of course every episode is on the iPlayer. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.